Hello! Welcome to our third lesson in the series Learn with the Doc. Today we're going to talk about naked eggs. I'm Dr. Phillips and I'm from the Science Zone. Let's go learn about naked eggs. Okay, so let's look at these eggs that we sent skinny dipping into vinegar. Let's take a moment and I'll show you how to wash your eggs so we can use them as part of our next experiment. Remove your eggs from the vinegar and very gently wash them under a stream of cool running water. Be careful not to put too much pressure or they'll pop. Remember, the eggs are still raw. Then look at your eggs. Can you gently bounce them? Right, now that you have your eggs completely naked, probably a little bouncy, let's talk about the observations that you made. When you put the vinegar into the eggs, or over the eggs, did you notice tiny bubbles? What does that remind you of? I have a simple demonstration that might jog your memory. Let's look. So here I have some white vinegar. Inside of the cup, I have baking soda. So just plain Arm & Hammer baking soda. A big bag of baking soda. Let's see what happens when we pour the vinegar into the baking soda. I see bubbles. I hear bubbles. Pretty cool. Now your naked eggs probably didn't bubble quite that much. Let's look and see why. When we look at naked eggs, the shell has something called calcium carbonate. The carbonate part is very similar to what you see in baking soda, which is sodium bicarbonate. Vinegar is a weak acid called acetic acid. When you put acetic acid and the carbonate ion together, you end up with this amazing chemical reaction. Okay, so this arrow denotes the chemical reaction that is occurring. So when we add calcium carbonate and vinegar, what we get is something called calcium acetate, water, and carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide are the bubbles that you saw around your egg. They're also the bubbles that we just saw here. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about diffusion. So diffusion is going to be the movement of molecules from a really high concentration to a low concentration. It doesn't require any energy. So now we're going to head on over to the Science Zone and see what diffusion looks like using one of our exhibits. This simple demonstration at the Science Zone will show you passive motion. Notice how the tennis balls are all at the top of the ramp. If we give those just a tiny little nudge to set them in motion, they roll down the ramp really fast. Wow, there is no energy that was required to move those down. Well, let's think. Would you have to use energy? Would you have to push them up? Indeed you would. Diffusion is much the same. Diffusion moves from a high concentration to low. It doesn't require any energy. It's a passive process. Let's look at one more example of diffusion. So here I have a bottle of air freshener. If I spray it here, I smell a very strong smell. But the person across the room can't quite smell it yet because the molecules haven't moved from the area of high concentration to low concentration across the room. Give this a try at home. See how long it takes air freshener to get from one side of a hallway to another. What you're observing is diffusion. All right, let's get back to our naked eggs. Now, to understand the experiment that we're going to do today, we need to understand a little bit about egg anatomy. Where we're going to be focusing most of our attention is on the outside of the egg, meaning the shell and the membrane, right here. On the very, very outside, there's something called a cuticle. This is a waxy layer that helps protect the developing chick. Okay? Inside of that, we have the shell. The shell definitely helps protect that chick, but it's porous and it allows air to go through. So inside further, you have two membranes. So those are just little things that hold everything together. They're like an envelope. You have the outer shell membrane and the inner shell membrane. What you did with your vinegar is you dissolved the shell, and that also dissolved the outer shell membrane. What you're left with is a completely naked egg that is only protected by the inner membrane. You can still see the yolk inside of your egg. Something to remember, these eggs are still raw. Okay. We're going to draw our attention to the inner membrane of the egg. Okay. This inner membrane is going to help us learn about how water moves into and out of animal cells. Let's look at a cartoon of an animal cell. Remember that living things are made of cells. We're made of cells. Plants are made of cells. Everything is made of cells. And all living things require water. Okay? So it's important to understand how water moves into and out of cells. Let's look at just a few key components. Okay? At the very center of this cell, you see what is called the nucleus. This you can kind of think of as the command center of the cell. This is where all of your DNA is stored. Okay? Outside of the nucleus is this amazing thing called the cytoplasm. That's a little bit beyond the reach of what we can do today. I hope you'll come to summer camps so you can learn more about the fascinating field of cells. Now let's look at the very outside. This is the plasma membrane. What this is similar to is the inner membrane of your naked egg. The plasma membrane is what we call selectively permeable. Permeable meaning that something can go through it, but it's selective, meaning that it's only going to allow certain things. So the things that can pass through the plasma membrane are molecules like carbon dioxide, oxygen. This is a diatomic gas, di, 1, 2, so di meaning 2. And there's one other molecule that can move in and out of the cell membrane, and that is our favorite molecule of the week, water. Okay. So water can move into and out of that cell membrane, and it will do so based on concentration gradient. So think about that air freshener that you sprayed. If there's a higher amount of water, we'll pretend that this is water, on the outside of the cell, the water is going to rush in. But if there's a lower concentration of water outside of the cell, your cell's going to get dehydrated. So water is going to rush out of the cell. Okay, so these are just some of the diatomic gases, okay? Well, except for CO2, that's not diatomic. But these are some of the things that can move into and out of that plasma membrane. Again, water moves freely, and certain gases like oxygen and carbon dioxide. Oh, we're going to look at the naked egg as a model. In science, a model is something that we use to study a concept that is abstract and difficult to understand. When we look at something like molecules, okay, a single molecule of water moving into and out of a cell that we can't even see, it's kind of hard to conceptualize. So that's why we're going to use a naked egg to help us understand how water moves into and out of cells. Okay. I'm going to introduce a term here called osmosis. Osmosis is the movement of water, so we're only talking about water here, right? The movement of water from a high concentration to a low concentration. The key is that it's going to move across a semi-permeable membrane. So just remember that cell membrane. Okay. And recall that diffusion is going to be the movement of molecules from an area of high concentration to low concentration. Let's look at how this acts in our model, which is the naked egg. Let's look at that bouncy egg again. If you look at that bouncy egg, it's a lot bigger than a raw egg. What happened is vinegar is made up of a lot of water. The water went into the egg. Let's look at a raw egg. Not a lot of water in there. This is an egg that has gone swimming in corn syrup. Let's look and see what happened to that egg. Wow! It shriveled up. Now let's look at the corn syrup. Corn syrup doesn't usually move like that. Looks like a lot of water came out of that egg. This is an egg that I soaked in water, pure water. Let's compare it to the size of an egg that sat in vinegar. The one on the left sat in water. It's a little bit bigger than that egg that sat in the vinegar. See what happens if we poke it. Whoa, look at all that water. A lot of water moved into that egg. All right, this is red food coloring. See what happens to a naked egg when we stick it in a bath of red food coloring. The inside of that egg is red. The red food dye molecules diffused across the membrane. You also see that water went in. Let's look at these yolks. The yolk from the one that was in the water is a lot bigger, so it took on water too. Let's look at the one from corn syrup. There is almost no water left in that egg. Wow, even that yolk. Oh, and there's the egg white. There's no water left. That yolk is almost like a raisin. Now remember, wash your hands. All right, now let's do some experiments. The very first thing you need to do is get a jar and your naked egg. Okay? Your naked egg is very fragile. Don't squeeze it too hard because it'll pop. Place your naked egg into your jar and then think about a liquid that you can send your naked egg swimming in. I'm sure you have something at home. Ketchup? A cola? Let your imagination run wild. There's no wrong answer here. Now, before your experiment goes too far, make a prediction. Okay? Do you think that your liquid has more water than the egg or less water? Which way will water go? Will the water go into the egg or out of the egg. The next activity we'll do looks at diffusion. Okay? You'll need 2 cups of water. One needs to be warm and one needs to be cold. In your kit, you have powdered drink mix. If you don't have powdered drink mix at home, you can use food coloring. Anything that has a color that will spread out. Make a prediction. You think it will spread out faster in hot water or cold water? And third, how are those radish seeds looking? And remember, I used beans because I didn't have radish sprouts at home. I'm seeing some really neat things. Is what you're seeing what you expected? Did you make a prediction? Tell me all about your results in the Facebook feed. Thanks for joining us, and I will see you next time. Thank you.